So today, welcome everyone to IsisParenting Sleep Support webinar and chat. My name is Nancy Holtzman. I'm a mom and baby nurse educator, board certified lactation consultant, certified in pediatrics, and I oversee the online education programs and other good stuff here at IsisParenting in the Boston, Massachusetts area and online. And with me today is my friend and colleague, Meg Casano, and I will let Meg introduce herself and introduce the topic of the day. We'll spend about 15 minutes on this topic, and then we'll take the second half of the conference to answer any and all individual questions that have come in the Q&A box. So take.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Let's see, I just wanted to make sure I have a bit of an echo, but I'm good now. Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. I'm really excited to talk to you this week about how to gently reduce night feedings. My name's Meg, and I co-lead the ISIS sleep team with Erin Evans, and I'm a senior sleep consultant there. We've done well over 3,000 sleep consults, I think. Right, Nancy? So this is something that is a topic that comes up a lot, so we thought it might be really helpful for all of you if we share a little more info. My background is as a registered nurse, and I'm also a mom of 4. My oldest is just 6, so I love, chances are, the clients I'm talking to, I've either just been what they're going through, or I'm going through what they're going through, or I'm about to go what they're going through. So doesn't mean my kids are absolutely perfect sleepers every single night, but it does mean I know how to fix things when we have trouble. So with that, let's get started with this week's topic, gently reducing night feedings. Just a little overview from the topics we've done before, which you can go back and take a listen to if you missed those. But before you make a decision about what your child or what your baby is going to be doing overnight, you want to just keep in mind what normals are for the age, what our expectations are. Newborn babies, those first 4 months, it's totally on demand, whatever they need, whenever they need it. And it, by the end of the 4 months, it gets pretty exhausting for a lot of moms. Especially if their babies aren't really naturally rolling into some nice long stretches of consolidated sleep overnight. And so by the time you get to the 5 to 9 month range, almost all healthy babies need 1 to 2 feedings overnight. And this would be for, a baby who and on-demand breastfeeding overnight, these averages may be different because that type of nursing overnight is not disrupting the sleep for mom and baby the way it would be if you're getting up, walking into another room, or walking over to the side of a bassinet, sitting down, nursing, and going back to bed. So these averages I'm talking about for a baby in an independent sleep location. If you have a baby who's a 9 to 12 month range, you are looking at most babies in this range do not need any feedings overnight. They do not need any feedings overnight. If you are having one quick early morning feeding, like around 4 or 5 a.m., and everyone's happy with it and it's working well, it's typically not a sleep problem at that point. But really by the time you get to the 9 month mark, your babies have the capability to sleep through the night without a feeding. Just to remind you, it's interesting to see this graph here. This is a sleep assessment. This is something we give to our clients to fill out. So you could actually create a chart just like this for your own baby. This is real data from a baby, and this is so cool. Nancy, can you give me a pointer again, an arrow? For those of you who've seen this before, I love to show this graph, but if you way up here in the top left, this is brand new newborn baby sleep, and all the way on the far right, this would be 1-year-old sleep. And so what you're seeing down the middle of these columns are naps that get to be well consolidated. For this particular topic, what I'd like to point out is in the beginning, those first 4 months when everything is on demand, the circadian rhythm or the body clock isn't developed yet. And so trying to wean down feedings or organize feedings, it's really not appropriate at this time. The baby needs whatever they need during those first few months. As the circadian rhythm gets organized and you start to see this right-hand column, you start to get this nice thick black line that's consolidated night sleep. Here we go. Thanks, Nancy. Right here, this is where night sleep starts to consolidate. And so when the circadian rhythm is functioning, it's designed to do things like produce these long periods of uninterrupted sleep, particularly in the first part of the night of deep sleep. It's designed to reduce metabolic processes like digestion. It's designed to reduce other processes like urine production. Sorry, Nancy. Did we lose? Who lost audio? Okay. Hope everyone can hear me. Type in if you can't hear me. Okay, so the point is, as your baby gets older during their first year of life, you really want those processes of digestion and of urine production to be reducing to help get more consolidated sleep. And so if you have all these extra feedings going on all night, that's in a way sort of artificially increasing metabolism and making it more difficult for your baby to sustain sleep. Okay, so it's a little science behind the maturing circadian rhythm, why reducing the feedings are good in terms of sleep as you go through your baby's first year. Okay, Nancy, you're going to talk about this slide, I think. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Nope. I can hear you now.
I can hear you, Meg. Am I heard? Okay. I'm having headphone speaker issues, I guess, today. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm just going to do a very short overview on this topic because I'm actually going to cover this in great detail this coming Thursday at our breastfeeding webinar. Sometimes when we look at a variety of topics where areas overlap, I don't want to say that there's a difference in opinion, but there's a difference in focus sometimes. And so we run up against that quite a bit here at IsisParenting. So for example, in our newborn care or infant care class, we talk about swaddling with the arms down for better sleep. And then in our breastfeeding class, someone different will stand at the front of the room and say how important it is to have the baby's hands near the baby's face for early feeding cues and so on. And so, we do try to come up with a compromise so that we're trying to give a consistent message, but the reality is that it really depends on what your focus is. If your focus is on achieving longer stretches of sleep, then you may get one style or one type of advice. If your focus is on breastfeeding on request and focusing primarily on the breastfeeding aspects, then the advice you get may be slightly different. But I'm just going to quickly talk about the difference in terms of considerations thinking about a breastfeeding young baby and then a baby who's being fed formula via bottle. So breast milk, I think people know, is quickly digested. It makes a smaller curd in the baby's belly, so it does go through the baby quicker. Now, although that may feel inconvenient sometimes, and let's face it, in our type of daily life, it may be a little bit inconvenient. However, that doesn't negate the fact that that's the way it's supposed to be and that there are physiologic and biologic benefits to feeding in that manner, both for the baby and for the milk supply and for the mom. But in our daily life, when moms are going back to work at 3 months and they need, 6 uninterrupted hours of sleep and then to feed the baby and then to go back to sleep, fortunately, both babies and breasts are adaptable. And if you choose to go that route, you can do it in a caring and nurturing fashion and not have your milk supply and your breastfeeding relationship impacted as well. Your parenting style and the sleep location is going to have an impact. Obviously, if you're bed sharing, it's very difficult with a nursing baby to help your baby fall back asleep in a way other than the breast, because you're right there, the baby's right there. It's quick and easy, and the baby clearly is asking. And it's also challenging to let your baby try to fuss and resettle for 5 minutes or 8 minutes if the baby is in a bedside co-sleeper doing it in your ear. And so your parenting philosophy, your parenting style, and the sleep location itself will have an impact over decisions that you make and the types of changes that are comfortable to you. Ease of feeding versus maternal fatigue. There's no right or wrong answer here. So for somebody to say to a family or a mother who's happy doing attachment parenting, bedtime, nighttime co-sleeping and nursing, for someone to say, oh, your baby is 8 months old, he shouldn't need to eat 2 or 3 times at night. You need to stop that. Well, you don't need to stop that as long as you and your baby and your family are happy with the way it's going. So really, a sleep problem is only a sleep problem when it's defined by such as the mom or the family. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what the mom finds comfortable and what the partner finds comfortable. So mom may enjoy or well tolerate having the baby next to her at night, nursing on and off throughout the night, where partner feels like he or she would like the mom back and to be a couple again and not to have the baby in bed for the whole night. So sometimes there's a disconnect there. But if mom is exhausted by nursing on and off throughout the night, you can then make a shift if you're comfortable with that. I will point out prolactin levels do peak with nighttime feeding. In fact, your highest prolactin levels do come at around 2, 3, or 4 a.m. at that feeding time, and so it's not fun, but there's a biological reason why babies wake at that hour and typically do like to nurse, and that's also good for your milk production. Hunger versus habit and reinforced metabolic intake patterns. So for a baby under 3 months or so, falling asleep nursing is completely normal, natural, expected, and not something to worry about or beat yourself up over. By the time your baby is about 4 or 5 months old, I think it's beneficial to shift nursing earlier in the bedtime routine, so it's not exactly the last thing that happens as the baby falls asleep. Because if the baby accustoms falling back to sleep with nursing each and every time, then each time they rouse into a light sleep stage in the middle of the night, they will request the breast in order to fall back to sleep. And that actually can become a reinforced metabolic intake. So the baby is accustomed to receiving a portion of their calories overnight, and so their body becomes used to that, and you may have to make a conscious effort to gradually decrease the nighttime feedings while keeping up with daytime feedings, so that you're shifting the caloric intake to, for example, between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. when the baby is going to get the vast majority of their calories. Just because the baby takes a big feeding at night doesn't mean that they must continue a nighttime feeding. If we woke you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and gave you a sandwich and an apple every night, after a couple of months, you would be adjusting your daytime intake, and you would expect to eat in the middle of the night because your body is used to it. Strategies to manage comfort and maintain milk supply as baby sleeps longer. Whether or not you're using an intervention in coaxing your baby to learn to sleep a little bit longer, sometimes babies, if you're fortunate, all on their own begin to sleep in longer stretches. And so sometimes it's mom's breast rather than the baby that wakes you up in the middle of the night because your breasts are so full. The baby nursed last at 7 or 7:30 or 8 and went down to sleep, and now here it is 2 or 3 a.m. and you feel full to bursting and the baby is still asleep. And often moms at that point are afraid to pump because they're afraid the baby's going to wake up and want to eat right away. So my suggestion might be to express milk one more time before you go to sleep. So if the baby nurses at 7 or 8, you may choose to pump at 10 or 11 and then go to sleep, and hopefully it will be the baby that wakes you up early in the morning and not your breasts. And then again, join me on Thursday at noon, or if you can't make it, then check in on the breastfeeding page webinars later that day. I'll talk more about different philosophies and breastfeeding at night.
Okay, good. All right. Nancy, I think maybe, okay, I can't hear Nancy anymore, so I'm going to keep going. Just quickly about dream feeds. A lot of parents, it's suggested to a lot of parents to introduce a dream feed, which is sort of where you tiptoe into the room at 10 or 11 o'clock, do a quick nursing session or a bottle in hopes that your baby will then sleep through the night. We typically don't recommend starting this. If you're already doing it and it's working for you, fine. But we typically don't recommend actually introducing a dream feed. It usually doesn't really solve, once you get past 4 months, it doesn't solve the problem you're hoping to, because baby still is going to wake up around 3 or 4 in the morning when those sleep cycles are lighter and there's REM sleep and the sleep pressure or the sleepiness is lower. These are things we've talked about in past webinars. And also what you're doing with the dream feed is you're interrupting that first third of the night, that deep sleep. You really want your baby to be keeping that deep sleep sort of untouched. A lot more I can say about the dream feed, but I want to get to more of the wean part of this. So maybe if there are questions, I can come back to it. But basically, you're creating a habitual hunger at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock that your baby really doesn't need. Okay. So when you are thinking about reducing night feeding, it is not cold turkey. And so if anyone tells you to do it cold turkey, please remember what I'm going to tell you. Just like Nancy said, the metabolic process of digestion is in part controlled by the circadian rhythm, and it becomes very habitual. So if your little one is used to getting a feeding at, say, 10 p.m. or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m., and you were to just stop it altogether, even, saying, well, I know she doesn't need to eat at 4 in the morning. That may be true, but her little body thinks it needs to eat at 4 in the morning, and she really feels hungry. So, and actually, Nicole, I think, wrote a question over here. So, about nursing to sleep exclusively and how, the nursing just goes on and on all night. So one of the things you want to think about is weaning down, reducing the nighttime feeding slowly. I'm going to talk to you more about how to do this, but it's not going to work well if you try to just cold turkey stop it altogether. When you're considering the reduction in feedings, it's really important that you actually stop, sit down, think, and maybe even write down, what time do I think my baby needs to eat? What time do I really believe that we need a feeding overnight? Because that's going to give you the Remember, if your baby's between 4 and 6 months, 1 to 2 feedings may be necessary. If your baby's between 6 and 9 months, 1 feeding may be necessary. And after 9 months, probably no more feedings are necessary. Your pediatrician can help you feel confident in your decision because they're tracking your baby's growth and weight gain. By the way, your baby's weight is not necessarily a determination of their metabolic needs. So, just because they hit a magic 16-pound or 20-pound doesn't mean that there's a certain number of hours they need to be sleeping overnight. Okay, which feedings are you going to reduce? You always start earlier in the night first. So that 10 p.m. feeding, if you're doing that, that would be the first to go. Midnight or 1 o'clock, that would be next to go. You can also reduce them both at the same time. You always want to keep your early morning feeding, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., let that feeding be the feeding to help you get through those last few hours of the night when the sleep pressure is low, the sleep cycles are different. It's a more difficult type of sleep for your baby to achieve and maintain. 10 p.m., you have a totally salvageable night ahead of you. So let your nice feeding help you when the going gets tough. Okay, so the earlier night feedings always are the ones to go first. Okay, so how do you actually do this? The first thing, it's going to be helpful to think about how many nights will this take you, and this can vary a little bit. Almost all weans of the feeding can be done in about 5 to 7 nights. If you prefer it to take a couple weeks or even a month, that's perfectly fine too. And you want to know your starting point, which means, do you know how many minutes you're currently nursing your baby in the middle of the night? Do you know how many ounces your baby's taking in the bottle? Maybe some feedings are longer and some feedings are shorter. Maybe like Nicole, you've got 5 or 6 or 8 feedings and it's hard to know. Some are long, some are short. It may be helpful for you to know, are any of your feedings more real feedings? Like Nicole, just like only because I saw your question. Maybe Nicole has a real feeding at 10 and 2 and 5, and the other ones are just sort of little mini snacks like a minute. So basically, if your baby has a nursing session that's lasting longer than 5 minutes, that's a real feeding. Okay, or if your baby is taking from a bottle more than 2 ounces, that's a real feeding. Any of them that they really do add up to quite a significant number of calories. And in that case, you may want to err on the side of caution and wean them down slowly too. What you're going to do over the course of 5 to 7 nights is you're going to just start reducing the number of minutes you're nursing, or you're going to start reducing the number of ounces you're offering in a bottle. So for example, let's say at your 10 p.m. feeding, your baby, or 2 a.m. feeding, whichever it might be, your baby's nursing for 15 minutes. And so the first night you start this, maybe you go, as soon as you hear your baby call for you to eat, you go right in, or you respond right away and you nurse, but maybe you nurse for 13 minutes instead of 15. Okay, or maybe you go with the bottle and baby's usually taking 4 ounces in the bottle, and so maybe that night you offer 3.5. And then there's no exact number of ounces per night or minutes per night. You're basically just looking to reduce these feedings to down under 2 minutes for breastfeeding babies and under 2 ounces for bottle feeding babies. If you're doing formula, this is the only time that you can dilute your formula a little bit as well. You would never do this for feedings during the day, of course, but you can just, go a little light on the powder or whatever you're using and have a little more water, just so it's more watered down. With the breastfeeding, you're just reducing the minutes. Okay, and so over the course of about a week, what you're trying to do is undo that hunger cue for your baby. Okay, and so then the question is, well, that sounds great, but what do I do if I meet resistance to this? Maybe the first night you go in and you nurse your baby for 13 minutes and he's fine with that and he goes right back to sleep. And maybe the next night you nurse him for 11 minutes and he's okay with that too. But maybe on the third night you nurse him for 9 and he's really unhappy. He wanted more and he thought he was going to get more. So this is where, go back to the basics. Are you confident in what you're doing? Are you really sure your baby doesn't need to eat at this time? And if you are, this is part of the process, okay? Now you have options. I would suggest you go back and look at your bedtime routine. How is your baby getting to sleep at bedtime? If you're a mom who wants to just start really slow, maybe Nicole, you're going to be my example again. Okay, so maybe Nicole he's 100% nursing to sleep. So maybe Nicole is going to say, all right, my goal right now is just to rock my baby to sleep. And so you start at bedtime when the sleep pressure is high, you nurse, you get comfy and snuggly, but instead of you as you're weaning down the feeding that he doesn't need anymore, go back to what you did at bedtime. Go back to that rocking, that holding, that soothing in another way that you did at bedtime. You've already done it once with baby at the beginning of the night. So now when you do it at 10 in the night or 2 in the morning, it's more familiar. You would never want to nurse baby fully to sleep at bedtime and then say at 2 in the morning, sorry, not going to do it again at 2 in the morning. That would be a mixed message. Not only that, the sleep at 2 in the morning is much more difficult. So this is where you're looking across your whole night. Another way you could do this we call trading down sleep associations. So if you have a nursing to sleep association, like I said, can you switch to rocking to sleep? Then can you switch to rocking to sleepy and maybe putting in the crib? If your baby fusses, pick up and rock again till they're sleepy, put them back in the crib. After a few nights of this, can you trade to just rubbing his back from the side of the crib? You could do this in a way that would be a little quicker, a check-in style approach, where after you've done your wean down of your feeding and you put baby back in the crib, if he's resisting or unhappy about this, you start checking in, responding to and from the side of the crib. You might walk out of the room, or maybe you're going to sit in a chair on the other side of the room. You have different options for the type of soothing you would be doing, soothing either from the side of the crib only, or picking up and soothing in your arms, but always putting baby back into the crib awake. These again, this part of this topic is very personalized, very individualized. This is where a sleep consultation, if you were having a lot of trouble, might be really beneficial. The hope as you're doing the wean down is to use the perfect environment, like we've talked about before, reducing the calories slowly, and just sort of naturally help your baby to stop waking up for that feeding, because there's no longer a reinforcement in any way. That's the hope, that the feeding just gradually disappears. If you do meet resistance, then you're looking at figuring out how you can get your baby to sleep in a new way instead of the feeding. Okay, and so, Nancy sort of touched on this before, but basically there's no right way to do this. There's no wrong way to do this. We are always telling parents that, we are here success, and what's right for one family might not be right for another. The bottom line is, we know good sleep, well consolidated sleep without lots of frequent interruptions is really beneficial for both parents and babies. And so the bottom line is that you find a way that feels right to you so you can do it and get sleeping. Okay. Right. So, um, yes, I would love to. Escaping my brain at the moment. I think we're skipping to toddlers next week.
Okay, great. Thank you, Meg. So next week, Meg, what is our topic? I know you sent me the outline. You want to introduce the topic for next week? Okay. Okay, I'll send an update via Twitter. I hope you guys are all following IsisParenting and myself on Twitter. And Meg is not yet on Twitter, but maybe someday. Let's see. As a reminder, all of the sleep webinars are recorded, and I will post it to the same web page that you clicked through to get here today, so that you can refer friends to it or listen to parts again that you may have missed, and click the links if they're useful for you. We're always trying to extend the reach of our breastfeeding and sleep and evening webinars. So please do help us by spreading the word. Put it on your Facebook page, retweet the tweets when they come through. Let your friends, your mom's group folks know that you're attending these or that you've listened to recordings and find them helpful. We love the fact that people join us from all over the country. So please let us know where you're joining from. It helps us prove that we're expanding our reach and that this online initiative is very worthwhile for us. Again, Meg oversees our the information is here, and you can be speaking to somebody
couple
within
of
a couple of days and getting detailed information and detailed help and support. Thursday, the breastfeeding webinar is going to talk in more length about specifically breastfeeding at night, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's see what else. I think that's really about it. Meg, it's already 12:32, so I think we're going to have to. It sounds like we answered quite a.
Talk if you need me.
I think we made it through a few questions as we went along, but it being well over 12:30, I think we should wrap. There's never enough time to talk about sleep. It's just one of those conversations that can go on and on. But please do join us back next week, and we'll share some more helpful information for you. Have